Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of Hunting Matters brought to you by the Houston Safari Club Foundation. Don't forget to check us out at wehuntwegive.org. And don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast. That's Hunting Matters. It's on all your major podcast platforms in video and audio. Today, we're joined by two incredible voices in the wild food movement. Justin Townsend, the founder of Harvesting Nature and a wild food chef, and then Adam Berkelmans, known as the Intrepid Eater. I'm curious to find out what that means. He's a wild game recipe developer and managing editor at Harvesting Nature. These guys are fresh off the release of their new cookbook, The Art of Venison Sausage Making, and we're thrilled to have them on the podcast today to dive into their journey from field to fork. Justin, Adam, thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks.
So you guys are spread out. Adam, we were talking earlier, you are located where in Canada?
I'm in Ottawa right now, on the French side in Gatineau.
Awesome. Yeah. And Justin, where are you?
I'm in DC, but only for a couple more weeks, and then I'm outbound to Hawaii for a few years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What brought that on?
So I'm in the military as part of my 9 to 5 job, you could say, and so I'm getting transferred from here to out there.
Got it. What branch are you in?
In the Coast Guard.
Okay. I have my middle son. Our middle son's in the Navy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep. He's based out of Coronado. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Great station.
It is much better than when he was in Norfolk, Virginia. There's not a lot to do there.
Yeah, no, not much there. San Diego's great.
Absolutely. So, Justin, what first inspired your deep connection to wild food and the outdoors?
So I grew up, I am a member of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, so tribal member there, and, wild food is deeply rooted in a lot of our food traditions. And so growing up, learning from my grandparents, from my parents, my aunts and uncles, I think I have been hunting my whole life. Some of my earliest memories are of hunting and fishing, and it just have always really maintained that connection through that. And we keep it in our household now with our own kids. Is a very important part of our family and our household. And I think really it grew into what it is now after college, when I was looking to just kind of take my educational experience and my culinary experience and connect it together with my passion for the outdoors. And it's exploded, and I've been very fortunate to travel around and meet a lot of people and eat a lot of good wild food.
Yeah, we're all I'm going to say healthy wild food eaters, I would say.
Yeah.
Adam, tell us how the Intrepid Eater was born. What is it, and what led you to focus on wild game cooking?
Well, Intrepid Eater was actually born during COVID. I had been working a lot of different jobs throughout the years, a lot of outdoor jobs, while kind of being a passionate cook my whole life. And I always kind of wanted to combine the two. And after, I was working on a farm that kind of just shuttered down during COVID. So it was a good opportunity to try something new. And so I started the Intrepid Eater, the intrepid part being, traveling and trying new things and bravely exploring food. And the more wild stuff, I was kind of incorporating more and more wild food into it. And that got a lot more attention, and I was enjoying it a lot more than the domestic stuff. And eventually my focus kind of shifted almost fully into wild food. And I met Justin through that. I just kind of applied to be a writer for Harvesting Nature, and everything kept tumbling towards what I have now. And it's been a really cool, wild ride.
Did you guys see, I already know the answer to this question from my perspective, but did you guys see a big surge in the past 5 years, pandemic, post-pandemic, where people were starting to go, wait a minute, I don't want to buy my food in the grocery store anymore?
Yeah, I think there was a huge surge. I think it was already kind of starting, but I think the pandemic definitely amped it up, and a lot of people had a lot of free time. They had a lot of time at home. Resources were scarce at the grocery store, and they said, what can I do to make me and my family more secure when it comes to the food aspect? And I think a lot of people look towards the outdoors for the food, and then also for a release, because being cooped up inside because of quarantines and all that, like, people wanted to, and there's a large mass movement of people going into the hunting and fishing space.
Yeah. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I definitely saw, I think people saw empty grocery shelves sometimes for the first time in their lives and realized how shaky and fragile the whole system is and how much they rely on it. And seeing people like us who can just go outside and find something to eat was very appealing when when they might not be able to go to the store and find something to eat. So that became like a new giving them a sense of security, I think, being able to learn some of these things. So it's really amped up the whole scene.
Hunting Matters is sponsored by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Under the visionary leadership of founder Johnny Morris, Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's is leading North America's largest conservation movement. Together with their partners in conservation, they're positively shaping the future of the outdoors through donations, grant making, and advocacy. The 501c3 Outdoor Fund raises funds to support conservation efforts by activating more than 200 million passionate sportsmen and women, rounding up their purchases in Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's stores and online. Visit BassPro.com or Cabela's.com today.
And we're going to get into the cookbook and more about harvesting nature and the intrepid eater. But do you guys do appearances, public appearances?
We do. Yeah, I was actually just in Missoula, Montana last week for the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Rendezvous and cooked their field to table dinner there as a fundraiser. And we had a booth set up and did some of the different events. So we try to move around and make some appearances here and there, but it's not as much as we'd like to, is the answer I'd like to say.
Well, the reason I asked that question is I wonder, you guys being experts in this field, do you find people seeking you out more, trying to get recipes, trying to get knowledge, how to make sausage, how to do these sorts of things? I mean, is it? I'm guessing that trend has increased as you guys have become more visible.
Yeah,
I would say so. We get a lot of people. We notice a lot of people discovering us for the first time on social media or on the website, and then becoming very active. Being like, whoa, there's a whole treasure trove of things here that I never even realized. And you can see the activity kind of jump from person to person as they join in. And then we also do camps. We have a good one down that we do every 2 years down in Texas. It's like a wild pig camp. And we kind of bring people there to show them how to, hunt, butcher, cook wild pigs. We've done snow geese in the past and others. And I think that just keeps getting more and more popular. People love to get their hands dirty and kind of get a sense of how to do everything from start to finish. And I feel like we've, changed a lot of lives like that, actually, that people come without the knowledge and leave with it, and they feel very empowered.
Yeah, I think, what's been labeled the field to fork movement over the past several years, it's been interesting to watch the growth of it in different phases and iterations. I'm curious, Adam, what's your favorite part of a wild hog?
That's a good question. One of the things I don't know, I always have a hard time picking favorites. So one of the favorite things we make at the camp, there's a hog head rillette. So it's basically a take on a French application where you boil down an entire pig's head, like skinned and everything, skinned and cleaned, till the meat's falling off the bone. You shred it all. Use all the usable meat, the cheeks and the jowls and everything, and then whip it down with some of the fat and some of the broth and some of the flavor, and it kind of turns almost like into a pate type thing. You can spread on the crackers, and it's always a big hit. And it's one of those things that you would never think to be able to use this head, but it provides a huge amount of delicious meat.
So is it a bigger hit to people that don't know what it actually is?
Well, we're usually pretty clear. We don't like tricking people. So usually when people show up to the camp, we put out a big spread of all the different parts of the pig that they might not have tried before. And people are very, like, I've always worried that it might be a little too intimidating to them. But people show up and they're ready to go and they're ready to try new things. And they're always a big hit. From the head to the testicles to the back shafts, everyone loves every part of it. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Louisiana. So there were things that we grew up eating that most people wouldn't even, take a look at. I mean, that was just part of growing up. There wasn't much that went to waste at all on any type of animal. And, when you say hog head cheese, people look at you like you're crazy. Like, what, hog head cheese? What's that? But that's part of my culture and what I grew up with. Mm-hmm. Justin, Adam mentioned a little bit earlier about how you guys kind of got together, but how did you guys meet and how did you guys decide that this partnership was going to work for you guys?
I think So I'll address the second part first. It's always just been kind of natural, and I think we've been traveling similar paths for a very long time, and it's just worked well to partner and work together on a lot of projects. I think Adam carries the same passion for wild food that I do, and we both have similar communication styles and work well together, and people skills and all that. So it fits very well. We met, so as Adam mentioned, a few years ago, we're soliciting for field staff writers to come on and help contribute content and stuff. And Adam applied for that and worked with us in that position for a while. Then we launched our magazine for a short period, and he was a major contributor to that. And then we had a gap after that in our managing editor position, and I offered it to Adam, and he said, "Yeah, this works." And that was 4 years ago.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and so now his role, he's very he's smalls down his role. So I would say he's more of like the digital content manager for the entire platform. So he manages the content on the website. He has a lot in the social media space, and then now as we launch into our print projects, he's very, very heavily involved in that, and in the camps as well. So I would say Adam carries as much weight as I do, probably more.
It's been easy because we've become very close friends.
Yeah.
Through that time, so and we live apart, so the chance to work together is a chance to hang out too. So it's always something we both look forward to, I think, or I hope, anyways.
Yeah. You're right.
Very cool. Adam, I got to ask you this question. It's not even on my list. It just popped in my head. Do you know a guy that goes by the name of the Roadkill Chef up there in Canada? You ever heard of that
him,
guy?
but I've never met him or anything.
Pat Keogh?
I think I've seen the stuff on Instagram.
So you guys will enjoy this. Appreciate it probably more than most people. So I got to hunt with him. He had never hunted for Rio turkeys in Texas. So a buddy of mine was really good friends with him. And Pat has worked with Ducks Unlimited for years in Canada. And they started telling me stories about him. And I said, Roadkill Chef, really? That's what they call you up there in Canada? He goes, yeah. He goes, I'm a Roadkill Chef. And so the other guy tells a story. They said, yeah, he was supposed to show up to some speaking engagement on behalf of Ducks Unlimited. He showed up and he was all sweaty and he had blood on his shirt and stuff. And evidently somebody had clipped a moose up there. And he stopped and butchered it out on the way to on the way to the deal, called the local agents and everybody, they didn't want to just leave it laying there, But I've heard some stories. I was curious to know if you'd ever heard of him.
No, I think we get along great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Capital Farm Credit understands that there's something about the outdoors that pulls you in. Could be the fresh air, the colors, the smells, the animals, the freedom. It's all just a part of who you are. And with our recreational land loans, you can purchase land for whatever outdoor pursuit you please. That way, the outdoors won't just be in your soul, it'll also be in your name. To learn more, visit CapitalFarmCredit.com. Together, we're better.
So let's talk about the new cookbook, The Art of Venison Sausage Making. What inspired that endeavor?
So I think really what started it, we get a lot of questions. We've taken a lot of questions and requests from our followers, via social media and through the podcast and website and all that. And we realized we kept getting a lot of questions about sausage making, and people were like, how do I do this? How do that? What's your favorite recipe? And so between myself, Adam Berkelmans here, and Adam Steele, who's one of our friends that helps us with the butchering at the camps, we put our heads together, and I was like, look, guys, let's crank out a part 1 venison sausage book, and let's cover sort of a 101 on sausage and go all the way through the very beginning and just go step by step through the entirety of the process to show people how to make sausage. And granted, there's lots of sausage books out there, but there's none that cater just towards venison. So deer, elk, moose, any big game you can sub in. You could even sub in beef and pork for the recipes we have in here. But we wanted something that somebody could pick up and they could go through the entire process and be just completely satisfied. And that was sort of the motivation. Yeah,
because I mean, to people who've not been exposed to it, sausage making can seem scary.
Yeah.
The equipment, the materials, and all those things you do. Adam, is this book written more for new hunters, home cooks, seasoned processors, all of the above?
I think all of the above. I think anyone who hasn't spent a ton of time already making sausage. I think so many hunters. I even know a lot of hunters who'll even butcher their own deer at home and then send meat out to get made into sausage from butchers. So it seems like it's a scary process, but in the guilty party here. So I think just having a book that can walk you through everything in a calm, easy manner, show you how to do it. I think it's going to benefit anyone who wants to eat sausage and brings meat home. I think it's not too dumbed down, but it's not too difficult either. I think it could help anybody who needs it.
The thing I found, my own personal experience with sausage, sounds like I'm going to reveal something big here, but I'm not. But if I'm throwing anything on the smoker or on the barbecue pit, I throw sausage on there with it every time. I mean, even if I'm cooking ribeyes, hey, there's sausage in the freezer, I'm going to go grab it, and I got deer sausage in the freezer, and I go throw it on. So, to me, sausage is almost a perfect food. Whether whether you heat it up, you got several links you heat up and you slice it up so people can snack on it while you're cooking, or you serve it as a side dish. I mean, what are your views and philosophies on sausage? Because I think it's an all-purpose food.
Yeah, I think so. And we took that approach in the book, and we threw in some recipes as well of like things to do with the sausage, because I love grilled sausage, as much as the next person, or pan fried or anything like that. But I think having some different variations of things to do with it, whether you're making gumbo, you're making sandwiches, you're making biscuits and gravy, like all that stuff is there, and it involves sausage. And, Joe, I'm of the same opinion of you of like, I think it's a universal food. I finished just this morning. I probably made 20 pounds of boudin sausage, and it's like my favorite sausage to make in the entire world. It's so good. And it's full of, I was thinking about it. I was like, this is probably one of the most nutrient like foods out there, because you've got all the vegetables in it. You've got grains through the rice. You put liver in it, so you're getting all those vitamins and minerals in there. And then you've got the deer meat in there as well. And like, there's just so much goodness that goes into a sausage. And I think it's a great thing.
Mm-hmm. It's if they drew blood from me right now, they would probably have a 20% detection rate of boudin. Because I grew up eating it. I mean, I grew up eating the boudin rouge, the raw boudin. I mean, all of it. I mean, it is. That's another perfect food. That's actually in Cajun culture. That's actually a separate food group.
I believe it.
It's boudin. Yeah. I can eat boudin all day long.
Hunting Matters is presented by Copandero Indoor Archery Pistol and Rifle Range, your premier indoor archery pistol and rifle shooting destination. Located in Oak Ridge North, right next to the Woodlands, Copandero offers two 25-yard pistol ranges, a 100-yard rifle range, and a 25-yard archery range. Whether you're honing your skills or just starting, Copandero has everything you need, including rentals, classes, a retail store, an in-house cafe, and a VIP lounge. Join Copandero today for an unmatched shooting experience. To learn more, go to copandero.com.
Are there differences between making sausage with venison versus, store-bought meats? Are there tricks and things that are differences in those two processes?
I would say that venison is going to be leaner. Your biggest thing you got to deal with when you're dealing with venison is that it's going to be a lot leaner than beef, a lot leaner than pork. So you're going to have to pay a lot of attention to your fat ratios. A lot of people like to. I've noticed a lot of hunters like to stray away from fat, and they don't want to. There's a thought of making something maybe unpure if you add a lot of pork fat or beef fat to something. But then you're going to have a dry and crumbly sausage. It's never going to be great. And I think paying attention to those fat ratios, which we cover in the book, is extremely important when dealing with lean wild meats. Another thing you might run into if you're sensitive to, the robust flavors of game, especially if you're using things like liver or, neck meat, which often gets ground up into sausage. It's going to be, like I said, more bold, robust flavor than beef. And if you want to tone that down a little bit, there's recipes in the book that have certain herbs and certain flavorings that can really accentuate that and tone down the boldness while still making delicious, very much venison forward sausage. So I think we cover that, the differences in dealing with game meat compared to your kind of bland or domestic meats.
Got it. Got it. Justin, did you walk me through the process of how you guys developed this book? I'm assuming there was a lot of successes and failures, a lot of recipe testing, kind of what goes into that process on creating a cookbook.
I mean, for us, it was. I think the most challenging was putting pen to paper, because there's like a lot of a joke, and I tell Adam this, and I tell other people, is like I probably spend 80% of my day thinking about food, and the other 20% is things I'm supposed to be doing. So just getting our thoughts out on paper was probably, and then organizing everything. The way the book is laid out, we did a recipe testing, but a lot of it is recipes that we use on the regular. And so, like, I've got a notebook that has sausage recipes. Adam's got sausage recipes he's got go to, and then Adam Steele, he's a professional processor, so he's got ones he goes to on the regular. And so we just basically adjusted those to someone who would be at home making it with maybe just like 5 pounds of venison or something like that. And then we talk about scaling up and things like that. But as far as just laying it out, and I talk to folks quite a bit about, writing cookbooks, it's like, first, just figure out what you're going to talk about and organize your thoughts in some sequential manner. It doesn't have to make complete sense, but just at least start putting thoughts down. And then I think with anything, like the pattern will just kind of emerge to say, like, oh, this is the way this book should be organized. And then we shopped it around to friends and family before we even took it to print. And we're like, hey, what do you think about this? Like, give us your thoughts. We had several proofreaders and recipe testers and things like that kind of went through and fact checked us and checked the recipes and make sure that we weren't completely out of line with what we were putting on paper.
Got it. Adam, do you have a favorite personal recipe in the book, and is there a story behind it?
Yeah, actually, there's a sausage in the book I call the mala sausage. And mala is a Chinese kind of Mandarin term from the Sichuan region, and it means hot and numbing. And it describes the spicy and tingling effect you get from eating chilies and Sichuan peppercorn together. And my wife actually worked with the woman from Sichuan, and I cook a lot of Chinese food, so I was sending her Kathy to work with lunches and leftovers and everything. And she noticed, she's like, your husband cooks that stuff? What's going on here? And she eventually invited me over to show me how to make these traditional Sichuan sausages. And it was all minute pork. You had to hang them outside. There was like some Chinese liquor involved. There's a lot of different things. So I kind of changed the recipe to reflect what someone would have in, a regular kitchen, and turned it into a ground sausage rather than what it was before, and kind of tweaked it a little bit and ended up with the sausage I was very happy with. And I made a recipe. Do you know what toad in the hole is?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like a British recipe, basically, where you pour a hot batter over sausages and it kind of rises in the oven like a Yorkshire pudding kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I made it kind of a Chinese style. So there was like, sesame oil and soy sauce and some different stuff. And then Justin was just at the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Rendezvous, and they used that recipe to serve a whole bunch of people at the dinner. And I assume it went over well, Justin?
Oh yeah, it was a big hit. Yeah, it was a huge hit.
Yeah, so that was a pretty cool one.
That sounds delicious. I'd buy the book just for that recipe, because I've never had Szechuan sausage. That would be awesome. So the liquor that you were talking about, the Chinese, I think you mentioned liquor involved. Was the liquor involved in the recipe, or actually just something you guys were doing while you were cooking?
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Justin, do you have a favorite in the book?
Yeah, I think the hot dog, we have a venison hot dog recipe in there, and it's just, it's phenomenal. And I think another layer to people being intimidated by sausage is people are intimidated by hot dogs. And this one is very straightforward. And my kids, I could probably take the whole deer each year I get it and turn it into venison hot dogs, because I can't make them as fast as they can consume them. And it's just like, it's really fun to see them enjoy it, as much, and then get into the process. Like my 5-year-old wants to help with the sausage grinding and piping everything into casings and all that stuff. Like he gets into it. And I think those are probably some of my favorites, moments, just to be able to share the book with them as well.
That's awesome to get the family involved. And yeah, I've never had a venison hot dog. I have to actually admit that. So that's going to have to move to the top of the list.
Hunting Matters is presented by DEA Ranch. Are you looking for the ultimate South Texas hunting experience? Then look no further than DEA Ranch. DEA Ranch offers some of the best whitetail and exotic game hunts in South Texas year-round. Whether you're looking to fill your freezer or put that next hunting memory on the wall, their professional guides are focused on ensuring each client has a memorable and exciting hunting experience. DEA Ranch offers guided hunts, professional staff, chef-prepared meals, trophy preparation, and more. To learn more, go to dearanch.com. That's dearanch.com.
And I've not had a chance to actually, in full transparency, I've not had a chance to go through the cookbook, but do you guys do brats as well?
Yep, we've got brats in there. A lot of, so for your sort of standard sausage like brats, I think we've got a couple other, they're snack sticks as well. They're just kind of baseline recipes, and we encourage people to sort of make them their own. So you're like, oh, I like a cheddar brat. All right, we'll add some cheddar in there. Or I like jalapenos or whatever. So we give people a baseline for some of them, and then some of them are really complex and really like out of this world, like, you know, the mala sausage, like Adam mentioned. We've got a Navajo blood sausage in there, which is kind of a crazy sausage that most people probably haven't had as a regular sausage, much less a venison sausage. So we try to have a bunch of fun with it.
So let's pick up here. So what are some of the common mistakes that people make when they're attempting to make venison sausage for the first time, and how can they avoid them?
I think there's 3 or 4 things that in general sausage making that's super important, and mistakes can be made that can ruin your sausage. One of them is the fat ratio. Like I said, you want to be dealing with specific fat ratios that can lead to a tender, juicy sausage. Your salt not only flavors the sausage, but it also works by chemically reacting to everything and creating like the texture you want in a sausage. So your salt level is extremely important as well. Mixing to get the right bind in your sausage, you've got to mix more than you'd think, and you have to look for a specific texture that we describe in the book, and that will give you that like perfect kind of store-bought texture. And lastly, and one of the most important rules about sausage making altogether, is keep everything cold at all points in time. So it's your grinder's got to go in the freezer. When you're grinding the meat, it should be almost semi-frozen. You don't want heat to start melting the fat and everything, and it will change and destroy your sausages. So keeping everything super cold is one of the most important rules of sausage making altogether.
That's a great inside tip, because I think a lot of people, that get all their stuff out and they prep, and they're like, oh, well, you don't have to bring out the meat till the last.
Yeah,
do that last.
Or you're on your 20th pound, and the machine's smoking, and you're still pushing everything through. It's right. It's time to cool everything back down again.
Yeah, so that's a good point though. But if you're doing a large quantity, I mean, it's best to take it out in portions, right? Versus,
definitely,
because like you said, you're gonna have to stick it back in the freezer if you don't.
Yeah, definitely. Or do it outside in January, one of the two. So,
well, in Texas, we never know if it's going to be 90 or it's going to be 40. So, if you have to play that one by ear.
Yeah.
So, Justin, let me ask you this. It's kind of a philosophical question, but how does this book help strengthen the connection between the harvest and taking animals and honoring the whole animal? Because I think, the whole animal is those 3 words is directly in line with sausage making. But I know that you probably had your eye on that approach when you guys were creating the book.
I think it comes down to, like, in its very basic tenet, just like approachability. And we kind of do this holistically with a lot of our projects, but I think the sausage book does that as well, because we want people to be able to enjoy whatever wild food they're harvesting to the most. And I think just giving them the tools to be like, oh yeah, I see that thing over there. I saw a reel on Instagram, or I saw a picture in a magazine, and I want to make that, but I want to use wild game to do it. And I think that's the connection piece. And it just kind of breaks down those barriers. I think especially a lot for new hunters as well, because they're coming into it for the food the food piece, the community piece, and this, I think sausage is that link, pun intended, I guess. Between the two of like, you hear people all come together and make tons and tons of sausage after they harvest animals and stuff like that. But then also just being able to, if you're just alone by yourself and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to crank out some sausage in my kitchen and just really enjoy it and take it and share it with friends and family or keep it for later. I think that this book opens a door to bring in people into hunting that may or may not be sitting on the sideline. So
Yeah.
I think that's one of those things too, that
Yeah.
food plays such an important part.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And to add to that, yeah, Adam, you're both obviously passionate about what people call nose to tail cooking. I mean, there's nothing goes to waste. So why do you think that using the entire animal is so important to modern hunting culture and especially new hunters?
I think that something has been lost in the last few decades, where meat has become something that is seen on styrofoam trays in the grocery store. People don't like to think about where it comes from. People don't like bones attached or anything looking like it. And it's gotten to the point where anything that's described, like say a heart, is a heart, but a loin could be anything. It doesn't bring that kind of picture to mind like a heart or a tongue or something does. Even that just turns people off altogether. And I think that people have been noticing that and feeling, a spiritual disconnection to the food, and kind of going back to the land and hunting and farming practices and trying to kind of do what our ancestors did and use the entire animal, respect the whole animal if you're going to kill it. I have a history section in the book because I'm always a bit of a food history nerd. And it kind of just goes through the entirety of sausage history, which coincides pretty much with the entirety of modern human history. It's something we've always done until the last little bit. And I think that, using the whole animal, especially in a sausage where you don't have to like approach, a whole, piece on your plate, it's a lot easier to ingest when it's in a tube form. I think that allows people to gently explore the whole animal and eating the whole animal without going like total caveman on it. And then it kind of opens up a whole new world of, flavors and textures and wonderful things. And also just so many more meals out of your animal. If you're keeping everything from the animal, you've got another dozen meals at least, before you have to go out and get another one. So I think that's something that's really important to us. And something that's really enjoyable for us too. It's not just, we're not plugging our nose to get it down. There's some really enjoyable nose to tail eating when it comes to all these animals, and sausage is the way to go.
So was there analysis, question of either or both of you, have you ever been issued a challenge? Well, let me ask this question first. What do you think is the most underappreciated cut of wild game or a wild game dish that is underappreciated that you think deserves more attention?
The shanks.
Yeah.
All day long.
Really?
Shanks,
Both of you are, why is that? Tell me about that.
I think shanks are like, they're very close. I've seen people toss them in the ground pile, which is okay. But I've seen people just completely disregard them altogether, which is not. But the shanks, because they're comprised of so many muscles and so many tendons, and there's so many, there's a lot of tough meat there. But because it's such a well worked part of the animal, it gets a ton of flavor. And because of that, you end up with this like really beautiful piece of meat. And a lot of folks won't take the patience to sort of slow cook them. And the only way to really cook them, if you're not going to grind them, is to braise them. And you're going to braise them for a long time, 4, 5, 6 hours, sometimes longer, depending on the age of the animal. But when you're finished, you've got the meat that's just falling off the bone. You've got all the silver skin, the sinew, the connective tissue has all rendered out. And it's just created this beautiful, like, collagen, unctuous mouthfeel of a sauce that you have with it. And you can just take that and through whichever flavor combination, you can enjoy it by itself. You can shred it and put it on sandwiches. You can put it in soups. You can add the stock into, rice dishes. You can just do anything with it. But I think like at its very core, it's the most simplest wild game dish to make. It takes time, but you can dump a can of beer, some spices, and throw your shanks in a crock pot and let them sit on this countertop for 5 hours. And you're going to come back and be like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing ever. And it's that simple. To me, that's the reason it's the best. It's the top. We have this like joking saying in our like group, shanks and praises. It's like how much we all love them.
Are you talking like too with the shanks for like a wild game version of ossobuco or something like that as well?
Yeah, so that would be like the crosscut version if you crosscut it along the bone, but you could just take either bone in or bone out and just braise it with some liquid, and you end up with something incredible.
That's I need a pot of rice and a bowl of that right now. Nobody wants to imagine an emergency on a hunting trip, but when the unexpected happens, you want the team of medical and security experts at Global Rescue to be there for you. Global Rescue Operations Centers are staffed by experienced personnel, and you'll always speak to an expert on the first call. Global Rescue provides unparalleled capabilities to transport members to the hospital of their choice, not just the closest. So trade what-ifs for peace of mind with convenient travel services designed for the unexpected. Learn more at globalrescue.com/huntingmatters. Have you guys, either one of you, I'm sure you both have, been challenged with a cut or an organ or something that somebody said, here, make this good?
Yeah, I think liver and kidneys can be some of the toughest ones. And there's lots of good preparations for them, but they are the most organy of the organs, I would say. Something like a tongue or a heart is actually very easy to deal with and cook, and you're going to end up with super delicious outcomes pretty much any way you do it. But that liver and the kidney can be a lot for some people. But for preparations like that, I turn to specific cultures who have been doing it for a long time, and it's also usually comes from cultures who have had some poverty, that kind of poverty food those are the kind of cuts that's all they have available to eat. So Chinese cooking, Southeast Asian cooking, Eastern European, Cajun cooking, like those cuisines is where to find the good recipes that take those kind of difficult to manage cuts and turns them into something delicious and beautiful. So something like Cajun dirty rice is like, we call that the entryway into the liver eating, or the gateway, the drug kind of thing, because it doesn't taste like liver, but without it doesn't taste like dirty rice. So it's kind of this beautiful dish. And I think both of us really look internationally for people who have been doing it for hundreds of years and know what the hell they're doing, a lot more than we ever did. And we draw inspiration from that, and we rarely fail. I think it's the way to do it.
I find, I agree with you. I find that organ meats are sometimes best introduced under the veil of other dishes to people. I'll never forget when I was a pretty young guy. My sister's a few years older than me, and my brother-in-law to be came for family Thanksgiving, and we were talking about recipes and things like that. And my mom was a phenomenal cook. Livers and gizzards, always in dirty rice, always in cornbread dressing during the holidays. And I can remember him saying, "Well, I don't eat livers and gizzards." And as he's putting a spoon of dirty rice into his mouth, my mother just looked at me and just smiled and went, "Okay, you got it, you got it." How do you guys balance creativity with respect when you introduce global flavors into wild game dishes? I know you talk about food history and that sort of thing, so obviously you have a great respect for the history of food. But how do you balance those things?
I think a lot of it comes from just the fact that we are acknowledging where it comes from. We're not trying to create a dish that's very similar to another dish from another culture and oh, check out this cool dish I made. It's like paying homage to those who created it, I think, is the first step. And then second is just each sort of recipe we create goes through a fair amount of research. And so there's factors that those dishes can have and not have that won't make it that dish from that culture. I'll share an example of I have a recipe I put out on the website a few weeks back. I called it venison yakitori. Yakitori is a Japanese grilled heart style, and had one of our followers say, "Hey, Justin, just so you know, I love yakitori, but yakitori can never be made with red meat. It's always made with, bird hearts or bird parts. And so really you want to call it this. So then I went back through and I was like, hey, you know what? That was my bad. Like I mis-researched on that. And so I changed the title, I changed the story, and I acknowledged what he said and sort of like, hey, this is a similar take on it. It's not the exact recipe, but you'll find these flavors in Japanese yakitori style, but we're doing them with venison hearts instead. And I think that we never seek out to culturally appropriate any flavors or any dishes or anything like that. And I think both Adam and I are very conscious about that and try to work with people we know that have, prepared the dish and we've generally eaten it before and all these other things. So I think it's a fine line to walk, but I'm glad you brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we have a certain reverence for these ingredients and the people who made it and the dishes and the history of it. And I hope that shines through, and it's not something we're trying to, use to get rich or something. It's something to help show people just how good all this stuff is. It's hopefully more of a bridge than a copycat kind of situation.
Yeah. I can see that. So outside of salt, pepper, the obvious ones, garlic, that sort of thing, Justin, what's your go-to? What's your go-to seasoning? If there's one, somebody goes, okay, you can have salt, pepper, garlic, and onion powder, whatever. What's the other thing that you'd have to have in your pantry?
I need seasoning or just writ large, like
Seasoning.
seasoning. Okay.
Oh, yeah, back in the corner.
Yeah. I don't know, some sort of. I'd probably have to say maybe like a dried citrus or lemon peel or something to give it like some different floral flavors and maybe some acidity and things like that. It's a hard one. I'm generally like all over the place when it comes to seasoning, and sometimes it's just like whatever I grab and I'm just tweak and change and go. But yeah, that's a tough one.
Well, in its essence, it's an unfair question because
Yeah.
we all know what each other's spice cabinets look like. So.
Oh man, yeah.
But I'm always curious to know. Okay, if I can have salt, pepper, and the basics, what's my other one? Adam, how about you? Is there something that you use frequently?
I'm totally addicted to this stupid hot Thai chili oil. I can only get it for certain places, but I buy it by the box now. And I had to go to this little Thai grocery store in Ottawa, and they're always like, "Oh, the crazy guy's back for his box of chili oil." So I put it on pretty much everything, and I feel like I'm utterly and totally addicted to it. And
Yeah.
if they ever shut down, I don't know what I'm gonna do with myself. So that's what I reach for more than anything.
You're gonna have to deconstruct that recipe and start making your own, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Justin, they see Adam coming in the front door. It's like, oh, here comes chili oil again.
Yeah.
This his nickname. Are you looking for an investment that goes beyond the ordinary? Wildlife Partners is the nation's leader in breeding and consulting for the exotic wildlife industry. When you invest in wildlife, you're not just acquiring a 100% tax-deductible asset, you're playing a vital role in the conservation of endangered species. Do you own land? You can turn your ranch into a profitable wildlife-driven business. And even if you don't own land, that's no problem. Wildlife Partners offers unique opportunities for non-landowners to invest in conservation while enjoying significant tax benefits and potential cash flow. I'm curious, what is a creative session with you two guys together look like? When you're developing recipes or planning new content, is it an exchange of ideas or?
Yeah, it usually starts off as like a series of text messages, or like I'll just randomly text Adam. I may be at a restaurant or an event or something. And I was like, oh, check out this dish, or talk to somebody who's like, you should try this. And I'll just text it to him, and then he'll respond. And then we just go back and forth and back and forth. And then generally like one of us will come up with a version of it after that. But it spirals out of control pretty quickly. Like it ends up, we'd be like, well, what if we did this, what if we added this sauce instead of this sauce? Or if we added this flavor, or, what if we turned it into a corn dog? Like, I don't know. We get, some of the conversations get out there, and maybe that's like the behind the scenes version that people never see on the website or in the podcast or anything.
If you
we
have
a lot of fun with it. I think
Yeah.
it starts bouncing back and forth and growing into something way bigger than it ever started as.
Yeah. Well, my answer to any question that begins with "What if we made this into a corn dog?" is yes.
Yeah, it's a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How can we tweak the batter, and how much jalapenos, or in your case, Adam, chili oil, can we add to the batter?
So you're onto something. Chili oil corn dogs
Yeah.
right there. We
I'd
just
be into
made
it.
something new.
Listen, the jalapeno batter for corn dogs is my favorite. So I don't see why chili oil wouldn't work.
Yeah, I know what I'm having for supper tonight.
We expect to see photos of it on
Yeah.
the social media within the next
Mhm.
48 hours. Between the two of you guys, you've written hundreds of wild food recipes. Justin, I'll start with you. What's the wildest or weirdest recipe that you've cooked up?
The wildest or weirdest?
Not saying it was good. Doesn't have to be good.
I mean, I think like I took a rattlesnake once and turned it into like a take on like a traditional like turtle soup. So
Mhm.
like with the tomato base, with the that was probably the wildest if you're talking about from like a meat perspective, because it's also very intricate to cook snake because you got to
Yeah.
steam it or boil it, parboil it, and then pick all the meat off the bones and then put it back together. But I was like the soup was phenomenal. It was actually I wrote it and we had it on the website. It's still on there for a while. And then I published it in the San Diego Reader magazine. And they published on their website too. And I caught a lot of flack for it because people were like, oh, like you're shooting snakes. And I was like, well, you know, it was an opportunity to try something new. And the snake was there and it was perfectly legal. So, yeah.
Or they'd freak out if they knew that we just grabbed them off the ground and fried them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adam, how about you? I'm sure I saw that look on your face. I'm sure you've got a Rolodex of crazy recipes.
Yeah, I've had some weird stuff. I think in terms of just kind of crazy meat, Justin was here for this one too, but it was at a pig camp in the past. We Coyote was trapped, who was getting in under the fence trying to get chickens, and one of the staff was practicing taxidermy, so they wanted to skin the coyote and work with it. So she was kind of doing that on the side while we were butchering pigs, and Justin and I kind of looked over and saw a skinned coyote there, and it's like, well, we should probably eat it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we did, and cooked it up in several different preparations, and neither of us are generally predator hunters. Don't have a problem with it, just don't really get out and do it much. So it was our first opportunity to do that, and yeah, it was really cool. It was an interesting meat and not that bad at all. Not the best meat in the world, I would say, but not bad at all. A bunch of people at the camp tried it. It was really cool. In terms of something that was like surprisingly the best meal I've ever had, it was a halibut head that I marinated and roasted on the grill whole, and went at it and just took made tacos and just kind of like took the cheek meat and all the meat off the head and made tacos with it, and it was like one of the best things I've ever eaten. It was just a big huge head sitting on the middle of the table and everyone kind of goes at it, and it was just so delicious, like almost like pork belly. I can't describe how good and fatty it was, and that one was probably the most impressive meal from something that I never thought would be that good.
Yeah, it sounds almost like a good old what we call a cochon de lait, where you do a pig pull. You just cook it, throw the whole thing out there, and say, "There it is," and everybody goes to work.
Yeah, there's something beautiful about it.
Halibut cheek sounds awesome.
Yeah,
sounds fantastic.
In the heart of nature, give your deer the nutrition they deserve with Record Rack Deer Feeds. The premium feeds support antler growth and overall herd health. Whether you're a wildlife enthusiast or a dedicated hunter, Record Rack Deer Feeds provide essential nutrients for a thriving herd. Choose Record Rack Deer Feeds for optimal deer nutrition. Visit recordrack.com to learn more.
So for people who in our audience that are intimidated by wild game cooking, where would you guys recommend that they start? Is it research? Is it cookbooks? Is it, I know it's a big question, but how would you recommend that they get started in wild game cooking?
I think really the easiest way is just try to take the things that you like to eat sort of regularly, whatever recipes that are, and they're easily transferable over to wild game. You just got to think about the fact that wild game's leaner than domestic, and so that you kind of have to treat your cooking times and your cooking temperatures with that. But honestly, if you go on the internet and you find recipes you like, there's a million out there. I mean, there's cookbooks out there, there's everything. Just understanding sort of the nuances of like, it's going to be leaner, it could be tougher. If you treat the tender cuts like they're tender and you treat the tough cuts like they're tough and you cook them, accordingly, then you're going to end up with a really good meal. I think a lot of people have probably had that uncle or great uncle that cooked them, a venison steak, and it tasted like shoe leather because they just butchered it, and it was a terrible presentation. And I think, in all honesty, like, just sort of following the steps of the recipe will get you there. And if you just trust, there's a lot of wild game cooks out there. There's a lot of really good ones, and they pour a lot of passion into it. And I think just by following those processes through the recipes and stuff is really good. And if you are going to pick up a book, read it like a book. Read it cover to cover all the way through before you ever start cooking anything out of it, so you sort of understand the whole process. And same for recipes, read the whole recipe before you start cooking. That way you limit the mistakes.
Yeah, that's a very valid point, because I'm guilty of this. I'm sure most people are. We have a whole cookbook rack at the house. There's literally like 8 shelves of cookbooks that we've collected over the years. That some were my grandmother's, some were my mom's, and same thing on my wife's side of the family, and things that we've accumulated. We actually had to do a purge not too long ago. I'm like, we'd never use this one, so we got to give this one away. But we all go to the index because we're thinking about cooking something. We go to the index, we find the recipe, we jump to the recipe. We never even look at the rest of the book. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a disservice to cooking. It's a disservice to the recipes. It's a disservice to the authors as well.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, as we've talked about, but also too, like, there's so many little nuances that if you're just looking for one recipe, you'll miss it. Like, there could be a whole section or like some little blip of preparation method that may just like inspire you to try something different. And it may not even be something out of that book, but it could be like a new technique you learn, or a new sauce combination, or a new, whatever, that's kind of like opens it up. And then that's like another tool in your toolbox as you sort of go to cook the next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I can see that. I just thought about this. He's not considered a wild game chef, but he was I've been cooking since I was a kid. My mom used to give me a $20 bill, and I'd grab a cookbook and figure something out and go to the grocery store and buy the groceries, because she was working, when I was growing up. And then later on, I discovered Emeril Lagasse, who most of us know who he is. He's not considered a wild game chef, but if you look at his list of cookbooks and you dig into them, you can obviously see things from Massachusetts that he picked up, as well as things that he learned when he was at Commander's Palace in New Orleans, and then later moved on to found Emeril's. There's nothing, I don't think there's a single one of his cookbooks that does not have wild game or seafood in it.
Yeah, I think if you go back to like the very foundation, sort of like cooking as a profession, and like, Escoffier brought it about, of like documenting a lot of the kitchen procedures, and brought that sort of like militaristic, repeatable kitchen prospect. But a lot of that was wild game, because if you go back and you look at Europe at the time, and even before that, like, the wealthy people were eating game because they could go out and afford to hunt it, and they had gamekeepers, and they owned the land and all these things. And then when you had that translation happen, when people, came to North America, the indigenous people here had been cooking wild game for a long time, and then it translates up to where it kind of became a norm in society. But I think there was a divergent point to where like restaurants and chefs love wild game because they like have that origin story of like, this is where it came from. It's in its purest form. The flavor quality is top notch. And then through, consumerism or whatever it is that happened sort of writ large to society, we kind of drifted away from game, except for those that hunted and fished. And I think a long way to answer the question is why you see that represented in cookbooks from someone like Emeril is because those skills and those flavors are still foundational in cooking, across North America. And, before people had a beefsteak, they were probably eating deer, they were eating bear, or, that was more survivability than, pleasure. But a lot of it's still like phenomenal food, and I think the restaurants have always done a good way of translating that over where they can.
Right, right. Adam, first type of wild game that you ever ate.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I had a bit of a long answer for that because I I ended up working as a butcher before I ever got into hunting. I'm an adult onset hunter, so I came into it as an adult, and I worked at a butcher shop who we switched over to wild game in game season up in Alberta, and suddenly I was butchering whole moose, bison, deer, hundreds of deer, and I'd never even tried this stuff. But luckily, a lot of hunters will, toss you a pack as a tip when you're a butcher. So I got to come home and start grilling it up. So, in the same month, I got to try pretty much from antelope to bear to bison to moose. I got to try all of it. Just kind of a smorgasbord of all wild game, which blew my mind and set me on this journey pretty quickly that I need to be hunting because this stuff is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a cool story. Mine personally was my grandfather used to love to hunt squirrels and rabbits when I was a kid, and my grandmother was a full believer in you don't waste anything. She would take whole squirrels and throw them into a stew, gravy, whatever. And I mean, my grandfather used to love squirrel brains, which most people freak out and they go, "Oh my gosh, you're going to get encephalitis." but back then that was his delicacy. That's what he would like, and I think we've all got our, if we eat meat or if we eat wild game, we've all got our origin stories. And I can still remember, too, the other thing, the first animal I ever shot, hunted by myself, was in a freak snowstorm in North Louisiana. I had my grandfather's single shot 410 shotgun. And of course, you could track rabbits in the snow because the snow was so weird. And it's just so odd for us to have it in that part of the world. And I brought this rabbit in. I shot it. I was like, now what do I do with it? Didn't even really know how to clean it. I was a young kid. Brought it in. My mother goes, well, let's go outside and clean it. I mean, she grew up on a farm. Cleaned it. And breakfast that morning was fried rabbit and homemade biscuits and gravy. And that just was like, okay, I'm in. I'm in. Justin, I'm curious. I know you've had a lot of experiences over the years, but I'm curious if there was a one hunt or a foraging trip that kind of stands out as a defining moment in your journey with wild food.
Oh man, that's a hard question too.
Maybe I should be asking Adam.
I think we're pretty fortunate. I think one of my first trips sort of out to the West in 2015. So I was living in California at the time, but we were hunting in Wyoming, and it was the first time that I had gone out to sort of purposefully go out and hunt kind of the big Western landscape. And we were hunting for pronghorn antelope, which has now turned into be, I think, probably my favorite meat in the entire world. And like, I love the pursuit. I love everything about it. And I think that was the big shift because that was sort of the year that I came back with such a newfound passion for just that Western style of hunting that it sort of changed my perspective on a lot of, the way that I had approached hunting before growing up in Oklahoma, and just really opened my eyes to be like, hey, there's this big, huge world out there. And like, you go hike and you spend all the time in the outdoors, and you get to be such a part and plug in more with nature. And I'd grown up, sitting in a tree stand or walking logging trails, hunting small game and stuff like that. So I think that was the big change in perspective for me. And then the concept of like public land and the availability to go out and hunt public land was just like, wait, there's land here, that you can just hunt. And I had grown up and we had hunted different places that were public and private and stuff like that. But to go out west and really see like this large expanse, I think that was a big shift for me to be like, no, this is something I need to be really passionate about because this is such a delicate resource that we're like very fortunate to have.
Yeah, that really drives home the point. I think a lot of people need to start thinking at it from that perspective more and more.
The Houston Safari Club Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that supports the future of hunting and conservation. Wildlife and habitat conservation, youth education and outdoor experiences, scholarships, and anti-poaching efforts are just a few of the programs supported by this organization. monthly events, an annual convention, award-winning publications, networking opportunities, and valuable resources for hunting knowledge are just a few of the benefits of being a member of Houston Safari Club Foundation. If you're searching for a group of people dedicated to protecting the future of hunting, look no further. Join Houston Safari Club Foundation today at wehuntwegive.org or call 713-623-8844.
Adam, conservation obviously is a big part of what you both advocate for, but how does ethical harvest and sustainability fit into your work, especially when you're doing these seminars and you're teaching others?
I think it always plays a huge part. We, like in every camp, that the camps that I mentioned, we always have a big kind of conservation talk. We try to find species to hunt that are problematic, like snow geese, like wild pigs, invasive species. We're currently running an invasive species line of clothing at Harvest Nature, some really cool shirts and hats and stickers and everything, and donating part of the proceeds to conservation efforts to help reduce these invasive species. And we kind of try to champion the whole thought of doing something good for the land while you're out there, and then a holistic approach that brings kind of nose to tail eating back into it, that what you're doing is kind of involve yourself in something sacred, so treat it that way and use the whole animal. You don't have to limit it out every time if you're using the entire animal. And we just kind of try to work with this ethos of being part of a larger system and having a positive impact rather than just taking all the time.
Right. And that kind of leads me into my next question, Justin. From your standpoint, what else can hunters do to be better advocates for the use of these resources and, beyond just pulling the trigger?
I think, that's a very broad question too, but I think at the very base of it, people just positively be a positive example, because everybody's watching, everybody's constantly, whether you're a hunter, you're an angler, you're a forager, if you've got a story to tell, tell it in a way that promotes it positively, share on social media in a respectful way, present yourself, follow the rules, the laws, regulation. I think at its very base. But second, like Adam mentioned, it's about sort of that circle of take and give. And I think the give is where a lot of people may fall short. And I think the giving back is like, find a conservation organization that's involved in what you're doing and, go out and spend some time or spend some resources or, find a way to plug yourself back into, even if it's on your own private property, like habitat restoration, like helping out in some way to sort of be a good steward of the land and of the resources, beyond just like, all right, it's deer season, I got a week to fill 3 tags, I'm going to go out and do it, and then never step foot back in the woods again. And I think the second thing is like, teach your kids, take a friend, like invite somebody who's never been into this space over for a wild game dinner, like just like open it up, because you don't have to, not everybody has to hunt, and I don't know that there's a space for everybody to hunt, but we want as many people to be positively associated to hunting and fishing and foraging as possible. And I think, through that, just like getting someone who may be on the fence to be a supporter of it through food or through a hike or through some conservation work or through even just understanding the hunting process in general, I think that's a win for our community writ large, in general.
Well said. Adam, what's next for the Intrepid Eater?
Well, who knows? Well, Justin and I are working on some other projects that we're pretty excited about. There will be a part 2 of the Venison Sausage book coming out eventually, and we're working on another cookbook as well. And from there, it's just more and more of what we're passionate about and what we love doing, and that's bringing wild food to people's tables.
And tell our audience where they can find the cookbook.
So if you go to harvestingnature.store, it's there. Also, too, if you want a quicker version, you can go to Amazon and get it. It'll ship. We do everything print on demand, so it takes about 10 to 14 days to get there, but that's sort of like one of those give back to the environment things. We don't have a bunch of books on stock. We just kind of print them as people want them. So,
right.
But no, we've got hard copies and soft or hardback, softback, whatever you say, for both those versions.
That's awesome. So for for the people that grab this cookbook, what are from each of you? What is it the main thing that you want them to take away from the cookbook?
I think just the fact that you can do it. You can do all this stuff. It's people kind of get scared away or shy away from it, but it's something that's you're very much capable of. If you have motor functions and you're able, you can completely do this, no problem. You might make some mistakes, and that's okay. But it's not this esoteric thing that you got to ship off to someone else. Like it's very much possible to be done in your kitchen, and I hope that this book allows a lot more people to do that.
Yeah, I think for me that we provide a lot of baselines in there, and people pigeonhole sausage very easily into certain categories like, oh, I only eat that kind of sausage, or I eat this kind of sausage. I want it to be a blank canvas, and that's really, I think, why we called it the art of venison sausage making, because it really is an art. You can take it any direction you want, as long as you follow kind of the basic tenets we talk about in the books. The flavor profile inside is completely yours to make what makes you happy and what is going to sort of celebrate your harvest the most.
Awesome. Well, folks, harvestingnature.com is the website. Thanks so much to Justin and Adam for joining us this week. It's been a pleasure diving into wild food and storytelling and conservation with you. For anyone who wants to learn more about the cookbook and about Harvesting Nature, go to harvestingnature.com and check out Adam and Justin's new book, The Art of Venison Sausage Making. Definitely going to have to be an add to my library as well. So thank you, gentlemen, both for your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Joe.
You bet. Folks, we'll see you here next week on Hunting Matters, brought to you by Houston Safari Club Foundation. Have a great week, and don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast. Take care. We'll see you soon. Hunting Matters is a Houston Safari Club Foundation production. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For questions or more information, email us at info@wehuntwegive.org.